Hi everyone, this talk is about how to enhance your creativity and also how to enhance your curriculum or your education. That's the what part. I'm going to jump right to the middle, the why. And the why is this, because the why is we are all creating our lives. I call it the big personal creativity project. We are all day by day, moment by moment, creating something new, something that hasn't existed before, and you're bringing it to be. So you're actually involved in creativity every moment of your life. And if that's true, then it seems like it'd be good to know something about creativity and how to enhance it so you can do a better job of living your life and creating your life. And by the way, collectively, all these individual creative projects that we're doing in our lives become the history of the world. So that's another big reason to think about how to become more creative and how to get more out of your education. The first assertion that I have, you can be more creative. My work here is done. No, really, the research is clear. This is true, but many people still believe that they're sort of fixed. They're caught in a rut. I'm creative and you're not, or you're creative and I'm not, or my creativity is just at this level and it can never change. But it's been widely disproven that really creativity is a skill, and like any skill, you can develop it, enhance it, and become more creative. That's why there's a class about it. Wouldn't it be ironic if you took a class and at the end you were no better than you were at the beginning? So yes, you can be more creative. And it really relates to learning, happily, for all of those of you who are professional learners. Creativity is very closely linked to learning. If you think a little bit about learning, you can understand creativity more deeply and thereby enhance your creative abilities. First of all, the brain is really good at categorizing things. It's a marvelous thing. It's the reason that we're all here. And so when you see that image, that red sports car, you immediately think car. You know, even if you've never seen that image before, even if you've never seen a red sports car before, you know that that's a car, and your brain is able to categorize based on previous experiences that you've had. It's wonderful. What is actually happening is you're creating in your brain when you learn. You're actually making patterns of neural transmissions so that when they're repeated, they're recognized. And so these transmissions that are occurring in your mind, as you take in all these different inputs, the words I'm saying, the images you're seeing, have meaning to you because there have been previous transmissions that have set up and established and created meaning for you in your mind. But learning can also work against creativity, unfortunately. For example, if I ask you to create a new car, the moment you hear me say car, those neural patterns that have fired so many times before happen again, and you start thinking of old cars, cars that you've seen before, and it's tough to come up with something new when you're thinking about something old. So at least in that one respect, learning, and this miraculous thing that happens in your brain, can work against creativity. The happy counterpoint, though, is that you can also make it work for you, and the more you know, the more you can be creative. So keep learning, keep building new scaffolds and new places for information in your mind. The thing that you need to know is that to become creative, you need to invoke a provocation. You need to have a way to jump from that categorization process that your mind used to do to a new place. And a provocation is simply a stimulus that moves that previous thought pattern to some new outcome. And there's lots of ways that you can do provocations. You already know many of them. Sometimes you get stuck on coming up with a new idea and you take a walk, and while you're on the walk, you come up with that idea. Or maybe you do some sort of word association, or maybe you look at someone who solved a similar problem before and draw parallels. There's lots of ways to do this, and that's the nature of the class that I teach, is how to invoke provocations and make it a part of your habit of your mind. When you need to be creative, you can actually invoke a creative thought process. And I think it's really important for many of us. I'm an engineer by training. How many engineers are there in the audience? Yeah, a very high percentage. To be aware that sometimes we make decisions too fast. We say, here's the problem. Yep, there's a solution. Let's take it and go. And really it might be better from a creative standpoint to generate multiple options, to come up with lots of options, and to be comfortable with ambiguity. Being comfortable with ambiguity is a good trait of a creative person because it allows you to think about different alternatives for a while before zeroing in on the one solution that you're going to choose. And so at the core of being creative is thinking about ways to muddle through the ambiguity until you arrive at the decision that you're finally going to use. So let's move on to the second part of this, and that has to do with the college experience. How can we improve college? And I'm going to assert that there's 4 big problems at least ones that I've been thinking about, and I'm sure there's many more. But let's take a look at each of these problems in turn and see if you can relate to some of these in terms of how to improve college. First of all, the cost. Cost has been skyrocketing. Here's the average cost for four-year institutions in the United States, organized in 10-year periods. In the last 10 years, from 2000 to 2010, costs went up 35%. In the previous 30 years, it's gone up almost 150%. And nearly all of the costs for college are borne either by a student or by the parents of students. And so you have a large debt when you graduate that you have to deal with somehow. By the way, almost none of the cost is borne by those who employ you after you graduate. Sure, you might get a salary when you start to work, but during the process, firms or other employers do very little to bear the cost. Secondly is motivation. How many of you have had an issue with motivation in a class at some point in your college career? Yeah. Me too. Me too, even in the classes I'm teaching. The thing is, you don't really know sometimes when you're learning something why you're learning it. You don't really know what the context of the application is. You don't really have this intrinsic drive to learn it just for the sake of learning it. Often it's something more extrinsic, like what grade am I going to get? Or how will this help me get into graduate or professional school? Or how will this translate into a job and get a high enough GPA to get into a job? And so a lot of the learning that occurs, we call just-in-case learning. You know, learn this just in case you might use it someday, maybe. And it's not just in time because you're applying it right now and you can see the motivation, you can see the application. So motive and motivation is really important. The next one has to do with content. Yeah, if you want to know what drinking out of a fire hose is like, that's 2.4 gallons per second. That's a lot of water. But the content that you learn may not always be directly understandable or applicable. And there's a lot of content that you would probably change. You know, what you may be learning may not be what you need to learn. And so content actually relates very closely to this last one, and that is who's in control of the content. And I'll be the first to confess, it's the faculty. Faculty control what's in the classes, and they control what classes you take to get a degree. And students have very little say except in choosing your electives. And employers have very little say. And in fact, I've heard employers, both as a student and then as a faculty member, say in job expos, hey, don't worry what you're learning, really. It doesn't matter that much. Just get through it, jump through the hurdles, get your degree, and then we'll tell you what you need to know when you get on the job. Instead, I would like to link arms with those people. I would like to say, okay, if there's things that students should really know when they get on the job, then let's teach that now. And let's make that a part of the content. And let's include you and students in the control of the content. I'm showing this thing that looks like the Mayan calendar because it's a part of a research project that we've been doing that attempts to answer the question, what do students learn when they're on these international service trips? Projects like Engineers Without Borders in the extracurricular domain, or like the LINK class, the Learning Community class in the course-based domain. And we've interviewed students and others and asked them, what did you learn on that project? Because they often came back and said, wow, I learned a lot. I learned a lot more than I did during the previous semester or something like that. And so we've identified these 5 big domains of things that students learn and 25 subdomains and specific things that students learn, and they're pretty impressive. It covers a lot of important stuff, including technical knowledge, but many other things as well, like project management and communication and understanding the community. And so I think that we can take some lessons from this, not only from the standpoint that we want to incorporate this kind of thing in the curriculum, but also we can listen to other parties and we can let others be in control of what's offered as a part of what you learn. And then beyond these 4 big problems, and you've seen these occur to different degrees, and I'm not saying that we need to fully integrate all of these disconnects, but there's certainly opportunities that we can think about in terms of enhancing what you learn and how you learn it in the classroom. And so if you think about the question, how to improve college, and you look at those provocations, you look at those problems as provocations, that is cost and motivation, content and control, and the other disconnects, then there could be a number of options. of things that we could do. And I, in fact, would like to engage with you all and others as well in answering this question. What could we do to improve college, and how might we change what's going on now to really make it more effective? I'm going to suggest one way. It's a really old way, and that is the notion of an apprenticeship. And you know, it used to be if you're going to learn how to make shoes, then you went to live with the cobbler and the apprentice work together and live together. And I'm suggesting something like that, but with another player. I think that the faculty member should also be involved. So if you go to a company and you look over the shoulder of someone at that company and you're actually learning what they learn and then eventually doing what they do, then the faculty member needs to come in as well and offer some points of expertise, some things that they might learn while they're in the process, because this can then shape the curriculum. This can become a mechanism for curriculum reform and actually adapting what we do on campus by learning what's happening in the field. And so the notion is that it wouldn't exactly be like a co-op or an internship where you leave for a while. Instead, every day you might work part-time and go to school part-time. And it might look something like this. That is, on the left is the university, on the right is all the rest of the world. At the university we have students, instructors, and courses. All the rest of the world has wonderful things like problems and grand challenges, the workplace environment, and practicing professionals. And if we can get some intermingling of those, you know, having students and instructors go into the workplace and having practicing engineers and experienced workers coming into the university, then we can start to listen to one another. We can start to be making more effective curriculum reform and coming up with things like the apprentice curriculum or other innovations that could be meaningful and help shape what you learn and how you learn it. By the way, at the bottom there I mentioned the Impact Lab. I think we really need, at least on this campus, a place where the community and the campus can come together and work on problems and do things like design and fabrication and testing in a space that is open and cultivates innovation. And so that's something that we're thinking about and would love to also have your input on. Where could this happen? Obviously, apprenticeships could happen any place where students are ultimately employed, and it gives those employers a chance to invest earlier in the process. They're investing in your education, they're paying you a salary. By taking a reduced course load, you might pay a lower tuition, or they might help pay your tuition even. And so there's all kinds of opportunities. And I, of course, mentioned there in the spirit of today, this could be at a startup. The startup could be your own. And so I want you to think really expansively about what you might do. And along those lines, I want you to dream and to do. I think you can really use this moment, the time that you're a student, to cultivate your interests. When I ask students what they're interested in, actually the most common answer I get is, I don't know, which is fine, but it's not fine to keep not knowing. So I want you to keep looking into possibilities, to cultivate your interests. You don't have to lock into one. You don't have to be, you know, come up with a great idea like Bump and then just suddenly take off and run with it. Instead, keep a list, keep a set of possibilities. You know, say this is possibly an interest I could go further with, and be comfortable with that ambiguity of not knowing exactly, but get started. At least get started on some of them and go down the path a little way so you can find out more about whether you're interested and how you might make it become a reality in the future. So dream and do. I also want to assert that in doing this, in creating your life and in creating other things, you're actually practicing an act of leadership. That is, that leaders create, they imagine and implement new ideas with impact, and we want you, and we want education to enhance creativity, to help you become international leaders and help you envision innovations that really address society's challenges. There's some big challenges out there. We have a class now, it's open to all majors, called the Grand Challenges, and it gives you an opportunity to focus on one of the 14 National Academy of Engineering Grand Challenges and really make progress in having some sort of impact on the world, beginning now, and it can continue as a thread throughout your undergraduate and graduate careers. And so I just want to summarize with a few assertions here. First of all, that creativity, as I just said, is an act of leadership. Also, that you can be more creative. I hope if you're the sort of person that just says, I'm not creative, you'll no longer say that after today. You are creative, and you can enhance your creativity. You can become more creative. And because of that, I'm going to assert, number 3, that we have the opportunity and responsibility to enhance creativity, but change is going to be required. We can't keep doing things the way we have in the past. We need to be different and be better. And I want to invite you to get involved in this discussion. now and later we want to talk about ways that we can do that, reforming the curriculum and infusing creativity throughout the curriculum. And finally, I want to encourage you to dream and to do, to create your story and make it truly remarkable. Thank you.